not exactly what you call a Swiss clock, was slightly late. But we're here now at 6 p.m. CET. The metaverse is coming and we're going to have a great debate. I know there's already quite a few interesting comments here on the channel. Please do use the comment function. If you're watching on LinkedIn, just type a comment. It will show up here on StreamYard and we'll be able to bring it into the conversation. Same goes for YouTube. Obviously, I can't answer all of the comments, but I'll try to do my best as last time. As always, Gerd Talks is a show where you can watch it later in a cleaned up version on YouTube and on Vimeo. So gerdtalks.com is something very new that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks as a response to this idea of creating more of a live stream presence. And so, great pleasure to have you all here, all of your millions of people out there. Let's dive right in. I want to start with this. What is the metaverse and why do we even talk about it? So there's a lot of hype on the metaverse. Right? Like everywhere you look, people are saying, oh, it's the next internet, it's the next gold rush. It's something that we absolutely must have, and it's the future of technology. And so, yeah, it's not this, right? It's not wearing a television on your headset or on your head. A lot of people have said it's kind of like, it would feel a little bit like this, wearing augmented reality, virtual reality glasses. But I think what's going to happen is very soon we'll see augmented reality glasses that are kind of like these, or projecting on the iris in some other way, and it won't be as clunky. But clearly to get the whole full body and spatial audio experience, you will need to wear a headset, and that's going to also exclude quite a few people who won't feel comfortable with that kind of interface on their heads. So let's take a good look at where it all started. Years ago, Jean Baudrillard in the 80s talked about what he calls the hyper-real, and then of course Snow Crash, great book by Neil Stephenson. I'm a great fan of his science fiction. That kind of brought up the discussion of the metaverse and actually coined the term. Then of course Second Life, and that's still here. So hopefully somebody from Second Life will chime in with some comments here. Actually this is Second Life here, right? As the party scene on Second Life. And Minecraft, the biggest system metaverse really is Minecraft. Millions of players playing at the same time in this pretty amazing game. And here we have, of course, Roblox, Britney Spears haunting place here where she does a business online in the Roblox metaverse. And Gucci is already on the metaverse, and of course, Facebook, which I'll talk about in great detail. And Microsoft with, I think it's called Mesh. It's a part of the Teams offering, also getting very much into the metaverse game to make it look sort of mixed reality, as you can see here. And of course, our good friend Zuck, right? What's going to happen to him, and where is he going to fit in all of this, right? Very good question. The metaverse isn't all about Facebook, but I will use it as a way to comment on where exactly this is going and what I wonder may actually be wrong with it. So we now have the first weddings. This is an Indian couple getting married on the metaverse, and I don't really know what that means, but good luck to them in their future. And of course, this is a really funny one I found on The Onion, where Jeff Bezos, allegedly, of course it's the joke as The Onion does, right? Talking about what's happening on the metaverse. Soon it'll be indistinguishable from the actual world, and that I will also own most of it. That's an interesting comment, of course, not directly from Jeff himself, but it does kind of show you where this is going, and this kind of idea of there being a gold rush that you absolutely have to be part of. Many people thinking the metaverse is pointless. The inventor of the PlayStation said so. Marketing people love it. They're saying basically the metaverse is the hottest thing ever. Of course, marketing people love to do that kind of thing, anything that sells well. CNN is twittering the metaverse is going to be just like the internet. Everybody's going to need a metaverse site or place or universe or life or something, I don't know. And of course, Wall Street is really loving the metaverse as a reinvention of the future of the internet, could be worth trillions. So lots and lots of hype out there. I'm really wondering if I should work on the Gerdiverse, to also be part of those riches. Let me know if you think that's a good idea to create a Gerdiverse. Anyway, really what I think is happening is this, right? As we're moving into the metaverse, it's those 5 things that are most important. It's really virtuality and 3D, right? It's the whole idea of having a 3D environment that's aided by artificial intelligence. That's going to make it much deeper. Real-time environments, of course, right? And spatial audio. You know, if you're a musician like I am, or at least former musician, you'd love to hear the sound coming in the right directions. You know, if you're watching somebody in the metaverse, you could hear the sound coming from the right when they speak from the right, and that it makes a huge difference. And so in this overall scenario of what the metaverse is, it's of course the idea of the Internet of everything, right? Everything can connect there and be present there. It's the idea of the creator economy and using NFTs and token and crypto commerce, essentially the Web3 kind of concept all put in there as well. And then, of course, is the idea of being interoperable, right? That is, of course, a bit of a myth. Can you imagine Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft coming together for a joint metaverse? I can't really imagine that. And it kind of gets me worried about this whole idea of interoperability. Why would the metaverse be more fair or more, you know, more distributed or more democratized than what we have so far on the internet? I kind of doubt it, but in practical terms, we're seeing lots of applications already, kind of like the metaverse, for example, digital twins in manufacturing and production. Siemens is doing a lot of good work on that. Even without glasses, these kind of things work. My favorite one here is, of course, this really funky Walmart commercial about their metaverse. Walmart is an interesting company in this turf. You know, they have a lot of stuff happening there that you wouldn't expect them to do, and they've moved pretty quickly into this turf, albeit, of course, playing catch up. So you're buying stuff online in the metaverse, I don't know if that's sufficient you know, to merit a big investment, or to buying land in the metaverse. I love this one, the next generation of meditation, right? If you're into meditation or yoga or body work, and yeah, I think it's going to be cool to do that at home. I can imagine that rather than going to, you know, going to a building and doing all of that in real time. But basically, looking at this, of course, the key point is this one, right? We're seeing already an economy to where we are in a place where technology companies are exploding. And this is despite COVID. You know, in fact, last year was a record year for the tech companies. This week wasn't so good for Facebook, Meta, right? Whatever, right? But it's a boom. Right? And this is really what we're talking about here. It's going to be great for commerce, great for tech. My biggest fear here is that the equipment necessary, which is the, you know, really high-powered virtuality helmet, and of course the internet bandwidth of 1 gig or 1 terabyte if you can, and all the equipment will rule out quite a few participants and further advance the sort of digital divide. I'm also with Intel's CEO, who said that we're going to need at least 1,000 times processing power to actually make the metaverse happen in terms of computing power. I mean, 3D rendering, yeah, more than 50 people at the same time. Imagine 50 million people. We're not there. But anyway, I mean, it's an interesting scenario where this is going. In the end, if it's going to be like the future of the internet, then this would be my concern. Is it going to be more monetization, more inequality, more digital feudalism, right? Taking rent from people, using our data, more demonization, more surveillance, of course, you know, reading our settings and understanding more about us than we would want to divulge, more confusion. Not to say that this is all that's happening on the internet, of course, there are many other things. But if it's going to be like the internet, I think these are things that we should fix about this. And the biggest concern I have about this decentralized concept of having a decentralized internet in the metaverse, I think it's going to look a lot more like this one, like the good old corporate internet that has been shaping with Facebook and Google and the big companies who are running the turf in their own way. So I think ultimately that is something that we have to discuss if you think that is realistic or not. Bottom line for me is, you know, I'm concerned about the metaverse becoming kind of a metaperverse, as I like to say jokingly, right? Which means we found something good and interesting, but then we overdo it and we do too much of it. It becomes a perversion. Just like social media has become, in effect, a perversion. Just like Instagram has become a perversion of the original thought, right? That's when you do things that are too good for their own good. Right? In this kind of concept of a metaperversion, a metaperverse, I think it's going to be an interesting one to illuminate. So I'm going to go a little bit more into detail here. It could be kind of the social media concept, but 500 times as bad. You know, we have a lot of abuse, manipulation, problems, and distorted reality, and of course fake news. And you know, there's many good things on social media. I'm a fan. Of course, I use it on Twitter, but I stopped using Facebook. I just couldn't take it anymore. The sort of constant performance factor of your life on a social media platform. Is it going to be like this by X500? That would be a very bad idea. Now, in the UK, people are talking about getting rid of the BBC now, or at least cutting their license fee, right, as a result of digital media explosion. And I think that's a very, very big concern. Is social media really media? To me, it's an algorithm. And the human value of only algorithms is ultimately not really what most people would be looking for, I don't think. But let's take a quick look at and see what our friend Mark is saying about the metaverse and why have they called themselves Meta now.
Our company is now Meta. Our mission remains the same. It's still about bringing people together.
Yeah, okay, we're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep connecting people. But here's my concern about this, really what Facebook is and Meta, right? It's a giant data mining operation. It's an algorithm, right? It has turned our world into an algorithm, and not a very smart algorithm, right? It's doing a lot of things that we perceive as being dehumanizing, right? And if that's going to be the same on the metaverse, I don't want to be a part of it. So this is a very big concern, as we see last week or this week in stock market decline for Meta, Facebook. A lot of people are concerned about that becoming a reality. So just a bit of news here. Meta says they want to track your eye movements and your facial expression. That wouldn't surprise me. Right? On top of that, of course, Mark wants to build the world's biggest supercomputer. So we can handle all of the AI and their processing. For some reason, I'm a little bit worried about that one. The world's biggest supercomputer, maybe build an AGI that can be like Mark, smarter than Mark, more emotional than Mark, I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned about that one, and as I look in the future and I say, okay, that's really cool stuff, from a geek's perspective, but ultimately, let's look at this thing that's happening here with technology. It's this age-old problem of technology. Technology is morally neutral until we use it. It has no ethics. Technology doesn't care about your human concerns. It doesn't know your emotions. It doesn't know the multinary way of thinking. It doesn't know your intuition, your imagination, your human agency, your consciousness, your spirituality, and the long list goes on. But it's still very useful. We just shouldn't be confusing it. I think ultimately this is a debate that we must have today. How do we protect ourselves from an overbearing technology? And you don't have to look very far. My favorite book that I'm reading right now is Dave Eggers. You heard about The Circle, which is, of course, a comedy or an aberration of Facebook in a way, right? And now the new one is called The Ivry. You have to read this because it's basically spot on saying what happens when we go down that road and everybody has a personal avatar that we talk to and everything is being tracked and performed. It strikes you as kind of being odd thinking about that, but it's so close, right? And of course, don't look up, right? We have to look up and face this and think about where that could be going. So ultimately, really, this is the crux of technology. It can be used as a present, or if we use it too much, it becomes kind of a bomb. Yeah? And that is so true for AI, for big data, for cloud computing, for the Internet of Things. I mean, everybody wants to advance things, but who is in charge of safety, security, ethics, standards? The companies building this are not in charge of any of that. They just want to sell their products, which I think is the utterly wrong approach, because this is where it leads us, right? It leads us to dehumanization. And if you believe the metaverse will be the place where you'll hang out, then I think we should have pity and discuss what kind of aspect of humanity you enjoy or not. I think we have to give humans a lot more credit. I think one hug in real life wipes out 1,000 Zoom calls, and Zoom calls are still useful. It's kind of like dating. I don't do much dating anymore. I'm already married twice, but and quite happily married right now. But it's kind of like dating. You look at things and you find the perfect angle, but in 20 seconds in real life, everything is different. And this is really important to remember that, we are not in the cloud. We're not living in the computer, right? Great video here. I'll only show you a short piece by Hyundai, where they talk about the proxy experience. I love that term because it shows you what's happening in the commercial space about creating a proxy of yourself, living in that world, going on Mars, touching things. That could be amazing, right? There's only one thing. I think that this could be really, really powerful for a universe where we are remotely there. But ultimately, if we go further than that, it could be useful for many things. But what about reality? Right? What about us as humans? What about what happens to us and how we're going to use humanity there? Right? So except for what happens between humans, what happens between humans is physical. And it's emotional, and it's spiritual, and it's, it's all the things that are not happening here on the screen. Right? The screen isn't where we find these things. Right? So the metaverse will be useful for banking, for real estate, for shopping. But for humans, I think it's just another tool. And I think Apple coming up with augmented reality glasses could be really tempting to get lost on that track towards a simulation kind of environment. Right? I think it's already enough that we're living in this world where many people have more relationships with their screens than they have with humans. And that's something we have to think about, especially when you have kids, watching kids on the airplane playing with the iPad, they're going to be too lazy to build a sandcastle going on the beach. And technology has become a religion. Right? I mean, we're praying at the altar of technology, and technology is both a religion and a drug at the same time, depending on which angle you look at it. I'm not going to comment further on religion. We'll just discuss that later. But technology should be a place where it's something that we use as a tool. Right? And I'm really worried that technology will lead us to a place like this, where we're blissfully looking at the sky and all the possibilities and just kind of dropping off the other end in a really bizarre twist of what we are. Too much of a good thing can be a very bad thing. Alcohol, cigarettes, coffee, food. Right? More people die from obesity than from hunger. And now we have people who are digitally obese, right? Eating too much, having too much information. It's like the gaming guys 10 years ago, going into a clinic because they forgot to go to the bathroom. Too much of a good thing can be a very bad thing, and the metaverse very much qualifies for this. Imagine of living, if you lived in this world, right? Imagine if you would be engrossed in this world. It could be amazing, but it could also be the biggest drug ever invented. Right? And I think really what we're seeing here is this kind of, crack effect in many ways, and that I've talked about for years when I talk about Facebook. Right? And that's something we have to absolutely avoid. Because it's dehumanizing, it removes the purpose of technology. And also the metaverse, in my view, when you look at how it's being used between people, it's sort of a disembodiment thing. It's like, I don't need a body, all I need is a head. And I don't really need the head because I use an avatar. And I don't really need my voice because I can have it synthesized, right? And everything is medialized, and basically everything around us is kind of reductionism, this idea of, we don't really need this because we have virtuality. Right? Nothing could be further from the truth. This is just a tool. It will not replace our lives. It's just something that we use. A telephone didn't take over talking for us. It's a tool for us to talk. Right? And there's no such thing as technology being a sort of a happiness kit. Right? And there's I checked yesterday again, there's 35 products, apps, that have the word happy in it. One of them is Happy Fork, helping you to eat slower. That is straight from the Circle and the Every, right? So bottom line is, you will not find happiness on the screen, in the cloud, or in virtuality. What you'll find there is usefulness, efficiency, optimization, tool-like environments, right? And hedonism. And I tell you, there's nothing wrong with hedonism, right? You want to have fun doing free digital products and doing all, that's one thing, but happiness lives somewhere else, and it will not reside here, as the promotion is telling us. And there's already a name for this, which I really like. I forgot the guy who put this book out, but you can look it up. Nature Deficit Disorder. The lack of nature. I mean, I live in Switzerland. If I want to get out, I go up the street to the mountains, to the woods, and this is what I do to get into nature. It is just so crucial. If we lose that, I think we lose everything. We lose our connection with ourselves and others, and of course the world around us. You've seen the movie Her, right? Where basically the guy is playing this really immersive game. In the end, really what he's looking for is this, right? The PERMA, as Martin Seligman calls it, right? Positivity, engagement, relationships, meaning, accomplishment. Those are human things. Read the book by Seligman about happiness. You can read what is defined as this. Are we going to find that in a metaverse? No, we'll find maybe a little bit of accomplishment there, right? So, Arianna Huffington once said, our algorithms know the logic of everything, but the feeling of nothing. I have to keep that in mind. This is really what's happening on social media, right? It knows the humanity of nothing, but the logic and the value of everything. Of course, that is a good way to selling ads. Great clips here from both the old Blade Runner and the new Blade Runner, to where you're essentially looking at this sort of fake world being built, and then in the end he realizes that his girlfriend is just, unfortunately, still just a hologram, right? If you see in the movie, you'll get the precious moment that's in here. So, in the end, this is what's happening, right? We're living in a world where we are surrounded by technology. That is not going to end. That's also going to be a great benefit for us. That's how we're going to solve our greatest problems, like food and water and climate change, energy, right? And that is extremely powerful stuff that we should welcome. But on top of that, I think really what is happening, that technology has to remain a tool. Right? It has to be something that we use to get to a goal, and that goal is somewhere else. Right? That is basically what we must define as human. I think if we confuse the tool with our purpose, right, then it leads to kind of a sickness. And we're seeing the beginnings of that unfolding here in the mental health scenario also as part of COVID, right? So going into this world, I think it'll be exciting to use for certain things, especially for business applications, doctors, lawyers, dentists, and so on. Of course, policemen, possibly, right? And stockbrokers, and yeah, I think it'll be very powerful. But I do wonder about this. Is it going to be heaven for business and the tech industry and for commerce and for government, right? But hell for people, for humans. And how do we keep that from happening? Because this issue is going to be 1,000x of the issue that we've seen in social media and of course with mobile devices. And that's what we should be talking about today, right? The metaverse is not good or bad, just like all technology, right? I do think we have to cut through the hype and come down to the bottom line of where this may be going. I made a movie last year called The Good Future, and it also talks very much about these issues of too much technology. It's thegoodfuturefilm.com if you want to take a look at it, okay? So that's my part of the pitch. I kept a little bit shorter, which is good, I suppose. I usually speak much too long rather than too short. So now we're going to take some questions. I'm going to move a little bit more into the middle here. So here, let's see what kind of comments we have here. I think we have a start comment here. So we have a LinkedIn user. Hello, LinkedIn user, whoever you are. We are critical in thinking on merging tech and business. Are there so many people spinning the wheel? Metaverse as VR is not ready for prime time, but I expect utility from Apple's AR though expensive. I couldn't agree more. Can you see it? Yeah, that's good. I hope you can see it. Okay, let me just make sure that you're actually seeing this. For some reason, I'm not seeing it. But anyway, that comment is there, and I would agree. I think I would trust Apple with many things, more than some other companies. I'm an Apple user, but this is something where I would be very careful, because not that it wouldn't work, I think it would, but imagine if you could see information like this in front of your eyeglasses and then you don't have it anymore. It's kind of like, you see basically the way that I use a mobile phone now is I do similar things here, but it's still not on me, right? It's an optional thing. And lately, I've been going to dinners with friends and family, and I try to put the phone away, out of reach, because putting it on the table already changes the conversation. That's a very important thing to remember. And so when we talk about augmented reality glasses, how would I use that? And then could I get off them? If I spend all day looking through them and I become superhuman, what would be the next step? That's a very big question. So anyway, thanks for your question here. Do ask more questions here. Don't be shy. I'm going to hear 4 live questions. Thank you. So, Dogan Aldindak. Thank you, Dogan. So, far humans create tech. What happens when tech starts inventing tech? Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm kind of worried about that. This is kind of the, how can you say, the sort of circular approach. Once we have technology that can build technology, we kind of already have AI, GPT-3, that can program other AI, and of course many applications, really mind-boggling stuff. I think at this point we're still far away from that actually making sense in a way that humans can do it. I think what's going to shape up until we get to the so-called singularity, Ray Kurzweil's book and his thesis, which is roughly 2050, maybe earlier now, 2045. Until we get there, it's always going to take humans to invent things that matter to other humans because of the unspoken things and the things that make us human. We're going to see a lot of AI progress in translation and speaking for us, and very soon we can speak WhatsApp in 50 languages in real time, and it's going to be, it's going to be okay. Right? So those kind of things are happening, but inventing tech in their real sense of invention, that's kind of like saying computers can play music. And yes, they can play music. I think it was, who was it once who said that computers can play music, create music, but they can't make great music. Right? And I think really what that means is that yes, you can take the mathematical patterns and create a product, whether it's a painting or music, and that works, but is it real? Does it have meaning? And remember that for humans, meaning, relationships, experiences, relevance, these things are central to our lives. And we see them even without talking about it. In fact, when we meet in person, it's 20 seconds of that happening between us, whether you're relevant or meaningful or whether there's a fit and so on. Machines don't do that. So I don't think that will be a major issue, but in the metaverse, of course, that could happen, that we would have AI building environments, as you can see in many science fiction novels. So here we have Patrick Bostiels. Thank you for being part of the show and enjoying it, hopefully. How can we continue with useless tech while we have real problems on this planet? Well, okay, like I said earlier, technology is morally neutral until we use it. I don't think the metaverse is useless. I think it will have great applications for conferencing, for keynote speaking, and for getting information out to people, for gathering. We just have to stop confusing the simulation and the alternative with the real thing. And this is the question of emphasis, right? It's not so much that these are bad products, it's just the bad use of them. And how do we do that? I think, the way that we look at reality is already shaping up very quickly here. People know what is real and what is not real. And you can see that happening all over the world now. There's a strong movement towards rebuilding after the COVID crisis. There's a lot of discussion about what we really want, a lot more questioning of technology, huge shifts in climate change. So I think people are getting more critical here. I think Gandhi once said, if you have 5% of people going on the streets and protesting and doing things, then everything changes. And I think we may have 5% of people now saying, I don't know about Facebook, maybe we should get rid of it. and maybe that will change a few things in the end, but it's just one of the examples for Facebook. Okay, so here another one. Thanks very much, LinkedIn user. Will NFT, non-fungible tokens, I explain in a second, be the enabler for trackable possession of rights and thus enabler of a full-blown economy of virtual goods? Or will exactly this repeat the failure of Second Life? At least I have also a metaverse of commons. Okay, non-fungible tokens, essentially digital currency that you can use as in image form or in link form to attribute value to something, whether it's a picture or a song or a statement or a video or whatever. It's essentially an ownership certificate, really. Okay, and it means that I own this picture and you can rent it and you can use it under certain rules, but it's not necessarily related to cash. And the whole Web 3.0 discussion is about this idea of inventing a decentralized economy, much like the original internet. Right? I'm with you on this concern. I don't think it fundamentally changes anything. I think that technology in itself will never fundamentally change the issues. For example, who gets paid and who doesn't. Yeah, this is a question of policy. This is a question of design. It's a question of tax. It's a question of fairness. And here we are. We're always looking at NFTs or Web3 or the metaverse to fix the world, right? But the fixing the world is not a technology job. Fixing the world isn't the job of a technology CEO or of a bank CEO in the end. Not making it worse is their job, that's for sure. But fixing the world is something that we do in social context, that we do with laws and taxes and regulations and social contracts. And this is something that requires awareness, which is way beyond machines. So the way to fix the creator economy, to make sure that creators are getting paid, is through a systematic approach of rules and processes. Like the music economy, I always say, Spotify to me is a great solution. If it wasn't for the labels, right, the artists would actually get paid. The problem here isn't Spotify. right? I mean, it's paying like what, 77% of their revenues to the labels. And do the labels pay the artists? That seems to be the problem. So the problem really isn't so much the technical setup, but it's the rules behind it and the intention of the rules, in my view. And I'm hoping that Metaverse will create a creator's economy. But on the other hand, we've seen many things like Bitcoin creating a shadow economy, or creating a lot of a fraud economy, you could say, as well. So I'm not much of a fan of that, but I do think that NFTs and the whole discussion about, of course, decentralized systems and non-autonomous organizations is a very good one to have right now, and I'm kind of watching that very closely. Don't have more of an answer on that one, but so here another LinkedIn users. Oh no, we have what do we have here? Chris. Sorry, I hit the right button here. Are we sooner or later heading in the direction of a Borg collective where people can be reprogrammed or easily manipulated once connected to a network? That could be the case, yeah. We could end up in a world where you can present yourself as anything or anybody, especially with voice manipulation and those kind of things, and would not require any more real attachment to somebody real. So I see lots of possibility for fraud and for collusion and of course for corruption there as well. But having said so, that has really always been true in digital media, right? So are we heading to a world where we're going to become like this? I don't think so. Let's give people a bit more credit. I mean, even the most geekiest geek in the world knows what it means to be human, to have humans' emotions and to connect to others, and it's not an either-or situation. And I think it's something that when we look at what is going wrong, we always kind of think that humans will never actually do the right thing. But I think it's the reverse. We often go wrong in the beginning, and then we end up doing the right thing, like with nuclear arms proliferation, with genetic engineering, and even with the pandemic. We're going to end up in a place clearly where vaccines are going to be available for anyone around the world for almost next to nothing, or maybe even suspending the trademark rights of the pharma companies for temporary. That would be possibly a good solution. So I have more faith in humanity there than most people do, that we can actually get this done and we can do something really interesting here. Okay, so Mark Prince here, let's see. Martin Lights. This could be useful. Okay, sorry about that. There's so many comments, I have to find the right ones here. And my mouse is a little bit finicky, so let me just... Okay, Chris Christopoulou. Thanks. Oh wait, we already saw this one. Sorry about that. Obviously I need to find out how to control my button here. So Mark Prince, that is indeed a real issue all over history, insofar that AI will be realizing cognitive superiority. The inequality may rise to the extreme. Well, I think that AI is not per se to blame for the inequality that may rise, but I think the biggest concern I have about AI is that when it gets really more generally intelligent, right, that we're eventually running out of control mechanisms. Yeah? I think Stuart Russell says it really well. He's a UC Berkeley professor, and he wrote most of the great books about AI, including the latest one called Human Compatible. And he talks a lot about this, and he says really what AI should be doing is to be competent, not conscious. And if we find that as a definition, we should stop trying to build AI that can be like us. Just AI, or rather IA, as I call it, intelligent assistants, that can get the job done. That will be already a very good start, right? And I think if we're building machines that can sort of be independent of us and eventually get to an IQ, parenthesis, of 1 billion, that would be a non-survivable moment for us. We're going to see memorandum on this, I think, emerging in the next 5 to 8 years. It's a similar danger than nuclear weapons, not AI by itself, but artificial general intelligence. Right? So cognitive superiority isn't everything. There's many other things that apart from cognition that runs the world. But I'll have a separate show on AI and where I see that going. Suffice to say, as my motto is, generally speaking, awesome humans on top of amazing technology. That's really what I'm all about. That's what my work is all about. And I think that's also true for AI. If we can have awesome technology there that we can use for our benefit, for climate change, for energy, for being more efficient, for stopping pollution, that'd be very powerful. But we should stay on top as the awesome humans and, of course, awesome planet. Right? So before I forget it, I would like you to subscribe to my newsletter if you haven't already, Gerd.digital. Now this is my little hype button here, right? That goes in here, and I'll show you the other hype button here about my book that goes right in here as well, Technology versus Humanity. But anyway, enough of the hype buttons. Let's go to the next question. And I think we have about 5 minutes left, okay? So we have Ricardo Amaral. What do you think is going to be the relationship between the value creation work and the virtual metaverse economy? That is a very, very good question. My personal belief is that ultimately we're going to go away from this obsession with work as being the purpose of our lives, because a lot of machines and smart technology will take care of our routines. And it may finally be, like we've been discussing for 20 years, that technology will allow us to only work 2 or 3 hours a day and do the human-only work. Right? And that will allow us to make the same money, to have the same productivity, but let the machines do the grunt work, the commodity work, banking, stockbrokers, of course, manufacturing, design, everything that doesn't require necessarily human ingenuity, and there are quite a few, so that we can move up the food chain, right? So basically what I think is happening here is that the definition of work will change completely into being more on the human-only side, which means that I will not be measured by how many hours I've worked, right? And that could be a very good companion to the metaverse idea of creating things together that become larger than, the time spent and the, heads down working and doing stuff. So the future of work, I made a movie about this, How the Future Works, it's called, and it's howthefutureworks.tv. You can watch the future of work there, and of course also my latest movie. But that is a big topic. We'll do another show on that as well. So Nuno, okay, okay. I'm going to show this comment. I'm not sure I'll agree. Okay, being connected to a computer and using special goggles. All people were in benzos. No, that's an interesting thought. I tend to agree on this. That this is not the ultimate way to go with this. And I'm really concerned about this sort of nature deficit order and other disorders that we are already seeing because of digital devices. And imagine if this is going to be 500x because of the metaverse, and then of course only the really wealthiest like us, the top 10% of the world, if we get to participate and nobody else does, that would make things even worse. Not a very good debate. But I do want to emphasize that I don't want to be too negative on what is potential here, because I do think that we have great potential in using this technology for good things. It's not all going to be things that are in a bad scenario, in a bad place. I think there's many things that we can do that are going to be worth our time. So, do we have other questions? So, regulators, Abhisek, thanks for the comments. Regulators are usually late in the scene with the ethical head. Is something different happening this time? Absolutely. And this is what's different, right? Ethics is no longer optional. It's like CSR, like Bertolt Brecht once said, dinner first, then morals. Yeah, if we have morals after dinner, we're going to explode. And the big difference now is that it's no longer called ethics, right? Basically, it used to be in the old days, or just 5 years ago, old days, right? 5 years ago, that if you were on the ethics committee or the ethics division of a company, you were on a slow track towards nothing, right? and now it's like ethics and understanding and values and making things humanly worthy and creating human flourishing is becoming the primary objective, right? I mean, look at companies like Unilever and what Paul Polman has done with his optimist movement, and Christina Figueres, and all people in that direction. Of course, John Elkington with People, Planet, Profit. We see that absolutely everywhere now. And I think the idea of having business without putting an emphasis on values is, of course, sort of a Milton Friedman aberration, even though, of course, there were values there as well, but of a different nature. So we're moving to a new world now. And this is egged on by COVID, by climate change, people, planet, purpose, and prosperity. I talk a lot about that in this very film, here, The Good Future Film, and would like you to watch that. But basically, bottom line is that I do think that things have changed. And we're only at the beginning of this. The next 10 years will bring more change than the previous 100 years. And I think they'll bring change that is going to be absolutely amazing, chaotic, and putting us through a test, but also be a potential golden era of a reboot of how we do things. And the metaverse is going to be one of those tools, I think. We should just not overdo it as a place of where we're going to live inside the computer. Ray Kurzweil again says that we're all going to live in virtuality and be virtual. I don't think that is a very good idea. I think this is something that we should use just like we use mobile devices and computers now. So, do we have other questions? Yeah, well, a lot of questions here. This is a good one. Thank you, Lital. What is the future of art? Well, you know, art is human, just like eating, just like thinking, just like our body. And creating art is something that we do because we're human. And I think art and anything to do with not being a machine has a great future. You can see already the uptake of everything evolving sort of artistic pursuit or human pursuit, including other things like therapy and of course things that you do with your body and sports. And we're going to see more emphasis on the humanities, clearly also in curriculums in schools, because the only thing that sets us apart from a machine is that they can't do that because they don't exist. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I don't think machines can and will exist, nor should they, nor should we make an effort to make them exist. And I think art is the ticket for us to express that and to feel it, just like music. Of course, I'm a former musician, so very good question. Okay, so Ray, let's show this comment here. Ray Zazo, it was not intentional, but unfortunately tech has a materially negative impact on the social norms of our society. I couldn't agree more. It was not intentional, at least not in most cases. Maybe in the case of Cambridge Analytica it was. But yeah, and this is something we have to do. And of course, I think really what's happening is many people in the tech industry are seriously concerned about this. They want that to change. Right? But the money keeps corrupting, of course, any other plan to do anything else. And I think we have to appeal to them to come back to their senses, to create something that is good for social welfare, for the collective. And that includes also things like tax programs and everything. I think we're going to see a world that will absolutely require this, or will eventually spiral into really dystopian society. My view is that we're so much on the way here. Right? We have to break through this old log jam of profit and growth, and it's all about GDP. You know, Bobby Kennedy said in the 70s, GDP measures everything except that which makes our lives worthwhile. And I would say that's also true for algorithms and for technology, right? It does all those things that measures everything nicely, but there are many other things worthwhile. And this is really, I think, the ultimate conclusion of the metaverse debate. We're going to take one more question, and if you have any current questions, there are quite a few. So, let's have, okay, yeah. Thank Mark. Us having the luxury of living in Switzerland and knowing the risk is making it easy to stay in touch with nature. Totally. And not get caught up in the metaverse. What about those stuck in the metaverse in megacities, with less than desirable surroundings? I couldn't agree more. I mean, here we are culturally very much connected to nature. This is just like New Zealand, Spain, in many places in the US, right? Nature is right next to us and with us, and we value it and cherish it and protect it for the most part, right? And so the idea of not living in there is kind of a really strange thing. I can imagine that living in a city of 22 million people like Sao Paulo, for example, or say Mumbai, where this becomes a real alternative rather than facing reality. And this is something that, of course, merits a larger view as to why that is what it is and how we can change that and to create more equality on a global level. I think if we don't approach the metaverse correctly, this could end up being even more of that, being an amplifier of this, also the sort of proliferation of misunderstandings and not being able to work together that we've seen in social media. But then again, the bottom line is we have to put our money where our mouth is. And so I've been proposing that in various ways, we need to create funding for these things. We need more public media funding, not less. We need more funding for collective programs that are based on the digital dividend. I'll have another talk on this. And that is clearly something we have to investigate, because in the end, that's what's going to be creating for us the good future. So I want to thank you very much for your time. I know that was a lot of information. So please go to gerdtalks.com. for the next show. I think we're going to plan to do the next one in a week if I can get to it as quickly. I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling. If you have any ideas what I should be talking about in Gerd Talks and which current topics are the hot topics, I mean, we have a very good list here, a lot of smart people out there, please do email me. The best way to do that is to go to my website, futuristgerd.com. There's an inquiry form that you can send there. Also, again, please subscribe to my newsletter. And of course, ultimately, there you get my last, most powerful ticker tape. Please subscribe to this channel and tell people about it and hit the bell so you get to be notified when something cool comes along. Thanks very much. I want to thank my team to support me, Stephanie and Marcia and Sylvain, my great designer who may be watching online, and many other people in the world who've been giving me feedback, all the great writers and everything I've been reading. So on that note, thanks very much. And I see you down the road, and live long and prosper. Thank you.